Hey teachers, what is the first reading skill that most elementary teachers cover at the beginning of the year? Teaching characters, right? All about characterization, diving into characters and their importance in the text, and everything you could possibly learn about the characters in the books that we read, right? So yes, it's probably one of the most important skills that students need to be able to analyze and evaluate and really think critically about. But there's a problem. Because teachers in kindergarten all through middle school even focus on characterization as a skill or a standard, there's only so many ways to teach it. So how do you break out of the box? How do you get some new and fresh ideas to help you teach characterization in a really engaging way? Well, today I have for you 3 mini lesson ideas that you can use with any text and in any grade level, really, to help you teach characterization. So 3 fun ideas. We're going to dive into each of those. And then there, of course, are more for you over on the blog. So when we are done talking here, you can click below on that See More button and find the blog post and go head over and check out all the other ideas as well. All right, so before we begin, of course, make sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss anything from the Sierra Harris Teaching Channel. So many great things coming up this year that you are not going to want to miss. So thank you so much for being a subscriber. All right, friends, 3 mini lesson ideas for you to help teach characterization. All right, so let's dive into number 1. So this is a big one. So characters, this is a big statement. So I'm going to make sure I say it nice and slow. Characters are not understood unless they are related to. All right, let that sink in for a little bit. So characters are not understood unless they are related to. So if there's a character in a text that a student cannot relate to, that they are not going to be able to understand them, therefore they're really not going to understand the overall, deep concepts of the text itself. So this is a big one. So what better way than to practice by comparing yourself to the character in a text? All right? So this one's an easy one. So in this lesson, you're going to have these students identify the main character or a different character if there are multiple. It doesn't necessarily have to be the main one. And they're going to draw, of course, a Venn diagram. If you want to get fancy, you could always use a double bubble, which are super fun. I love saying double bubble. But it's like a fancy Venn diagram. Super cute. If you haven't used them, go check them out. But make sure, of course, that you have the 2 sides labeled. And then before starting, you're going to discuss with the class all of the different aspects that when you're analyzing a character that you would analyze for. So you can analyze or compare emotions. You could analyze and compare actions that the character took. You could compare dialogue. You could compare relationships. You could compare appearance. So before you have them just jump into comparing and contrasting, you want to have a really deep discussion about all of the different attributes of characterization that we want to be analyzing. That way, when they go to compare themselves to the character, they're not just saying, he likes soccer and I like baseball. We're going more depth into he's a really hard worker. And then verbally they could say, I can justify this because the character was always on time for practice. They never missed a practice, etc. And on the opposite side, they could say I don't, work as hard, but this is something that I, would strive to be like. So, they can kind of go a little deeper, especially if you take the time to really list out all of those attributes and ways to analyze characters. So when they're ready, of course, they've filled in their Venn diagram of the different similarities and differences between the 2. Then you could even have them write out a paragraph as an early finisher, having them compare themselves to the character in more written form as well. So that one is number 1, and I think it's a really important one because, again, it goes way back to the concept of if they won't understand characters unless they can figure out ways to relate to them. So by comparing and contrasting themselves to the character, it's allowing them to find those relationships. All right? All right, so number 2, another mini lesson idea for you. The objective of this one is I can develop a character to be used in a story. So instead of reading a text, they're going to become the author themselves. And I think this is a great flip. And by flipping around skills and strategies like this to where they're looking at them from the author perspective rather than the reader perspective, it really helps students truly understand how these skills are developed in the writing sense versus the reader sense. So really unique perspective, and I highly encourage you to do this type of thing for almost all skills and strategies you teach. So understanding characters, we know, means that we have to understand them inside and out. So a great way for students to really understand how complex characters can truly be is to design one themselves, right? They need to be the author. They need to see the process of how these complex characters are truly designed. So you're going to find like a basic human outline, right? Like with a head, arms, and legs. You can find one on Google, just like a basic character outline. And you're going to place it kind of in the middle of their paper. And you're going to give about 3 to 5 minutes and let them kind of design the appearance, right? Let them get the artistic side out. They can color, draw the clothes, hair, eyes, all of that, okay? Then when that is up, then you're going to discuss how this character's appearance can actually reflect a lot about the character themselves. So they need to think about how they drew their character and how that's going to affect or what word am I trying to think of? I'm just going to stick with affect because I can't think of the word that's on the tip of my tongue. It's going, how does their appearance impact their decisions on the developmental and how they're going to develop the character later on, okay? So when they're done with their drawing, what they're going to do is you're going to have the students focus on the different aspects that we analyze about character. So the same list that we just went through, emotions, actions, dialogue, relationships, all of those pieces, and they are going to draw out different lines from their drawing, and they are going to kind of put in details about their character about one of each of the different aspects. So like one line for action. So what kind of actions would the character take in this story based on the type of character he or she is? What kind of relationships will this character have? What kind of dialogue might you hear the character say in the story? All right. So they're kind of developing the character themselves. Now, a little twist to this is this would kind of take away some of the creative aspect, but it would allow the students to really see a variety of characters as all of the students in the class participate in this activity, is if you were to go find clip art to represent a wide variety of characters. So in this case, maybe you would print off a few more traditional literature type characters. Maybe you would print off a few fantasy type characters like dragons and knights or whatever. Maybe you would print off some characters who have like maybe a negative vibe to them. Maybe they look like someone who's naughty, or that's going to affect like their dialogue or their actions. Maybe you find more of a parental type character or an elderly character. So you can either assign them and say like, I want your character to be this, and then that's how they design their character, or you just physically print out and give them a copy of their character. They can cut it out, paste it in the middle of the paper, and then draw the lines like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can really influence this mini lesson to really make the discussion strong about how appearance and the how the characters analyzed sometimes can go hand in hand. Not always, but sometimes. But then just the overall process of how characters are developed in the process that authors need to take in order to design these characters to then use them in the story themselves. So they're not having to write the story here, but they are doing the process of creating their character from scratch. And I think that's a really important step for students to take to be successful when they're having to analyze the character from the reader's perspective. Okay. All right. So last one for today. Before we go, I want you to know that I do have these 3 mini lessons as well as more of them over on the blog. So you can click that see more button down below, head over to the blog when we're done today, and you can read through the other ideas that I have. Plus you can print out this free copy of all of the mini lesson ideas. Again, they're great for any grade level, any text, and your students they're going to love them. Okay. All right, so number 3 today, the objective is I can identify primary and secondary character traits of a character. I think a lot of times we focus a lot on just all the character traits, like this character is honest, they're hardworking, they're determined. But one aspect that you can really do to make the students think more critically about identifying character traits is having them rank them, having them identify primary character traits and secondary character traits, and then they have to, of course, justify them. So in this lesson, of course, you can use a text of your choice. You're going to have your students identify which character, first off, that they want to analyze. They can, choose the main character, the minor characters, whatever you want them to do. And then they're going to take a piece of paper and they're going to fold it in half, hamburger style, of course. And on one side, they're going to write primary, and on the other side, they're going to write secondary. And you're going to have the students go back to the text, of course, because they're going to have to find evidence, but go back to the course and find, or the text, and find evidence that they can use to identify primary and secondary character traits. So they must, this is kind of a stipulation that you might put on them, they must be able to identify 2 to 3 pieces of evidence to support them being able to even write the word down. So they cannot just assume. Now they can make inferences, because character traits most of the time are inferences being made from actions and dialogue. So they still have to be able to find the text evidence that supports the inference being made. So then you can have a great discussion about, was there more evidence for the primary and less evidence for the secondary? Well, that then makes sense, right? You're going to have more evidence if it's a primary character trait and less if it's a secondary character trait. And so you can have that discussion about ranking different traits and such. You could even have them number them, like out of the primary, which one's first, second, and third. Out of the secondary, which one's first and second. So you can put a lot of different parameters and stipulations around them, a lot of different ways you can tweak these lessons, but this is a really good one to really dive in and have them think more critically when they are analyzing the character for traits, okay? All right, before you go, make sure again to click that subscribe button so you don't miss anything, and then make sure to go down below into the See More button to head over to the blog post to hear about the other mini lessons that I have for you, and then you can grab this free printout of all of the mini lesson ideas as well. So thank you so much, friends, for tuning in, and stay tuned for another one next week. I can't wait to see you then. Bye, everyone.